I think I always had some interest in making things. I like to use my hands a lot. I think art grew out of that. But when I was young, I made model airplanes and I carved wood. And when I went to college, I didn't exactly know what I was interested in, and so I chose the field of industrial design because I had some interest in making things and somewhat of a sense of design. I took a ceramics class and I liked clay. I wasn't interested in making pots or being a potter or using the potter's wheel, but I liked to build things out of the clay. My early graduate work was reminiscent of what was going on the West Coast, of hand building things with slabs of clay. I just saw big images and I wanted to make these things, and I beat the clay with a paddle, and I tried just to build it up. The size of the scale was to the scale of the kiln that we had at the school. Harvey Littleton, and there's a picture of my first class at the university in graduate school. My first class was a ceramics class, and I was sort of the last student to enter the classroom. And Harvey was talking to the students, and as I entered, he asked me if I was interested in blowing glass, and I said, well, I never heard of it. But he was gathering the students at that moment to be the first group of students in the United States to blow glass. He had built a small furnace at his farm, and the students then went out one day a week and blew glass at the farm. They had their own day to work there. Yeah, the very beginning, none of us knew very much about the techniques of working with glass. So the students were just a few steps behind Harvey. Harvey gave just one demonstration, and then we were on our own. But we talked, and he guided us, and so forth. And so it was a self-development situation. My first glass pieces were sort of just experiments, and I was interested in any technique that I could find and so forth. I went down to Leslie Ceramics in Berkeley, and they gave me some decals to try on the glass, and I found some luster paints. And then once I went to the Oakland Hot Rod and Roadster show and saw a car that was all flocked with fiber rayon flocking, and I thought, well, I could put that onto glass too. And so I started to introduce more color to the glass by flocking the glass and electroplating it and painting on the surface of the glass. And I was trying to push the material in a sculptural manner and introduce things that way. So it was very exciting in the beginning. And my first real sculptural series was called the California Loop series, where there were long extended pieces of glass that I swung out and made several pieces and then glued them together. The California Loop series really was an extension of how glass reacted when you manipulated it. That if you swung it, it elongated. That if you blew a little air into the bubbles expanded. So all the parts to those California Loop series were all natural progressions of the glass process and what glass does. I was interested in learning in the very beginning, and so I started to travel to Europe and later to Asia. In those explorations, I found that if I were to work in the factory, I needed a way to make something that fit what that factory did. I couldn't go in there and try to make them do something that they weren't knowledgeable about or didn't have any idea. And if I wanted to be successful and work, and I usually only had 1 or 2 days in the factory, at the maximum 3 days, so I had to do something that was going to be somewhat successful. So I developed a way of blowing glass into molds. First, big globes that they used to make lighting fixtures that I found in the factories. Then I adapted molds to my own shapes, and finally I started to make wooden forms that then reacted like molds itself, open-faced molds, and I could blow the glass into the negative and positive shapes, and and the wooden shapes would then make impressions into the glass, and that became the general way that I worked in most situations.
Blow a little bit. Okay, stop. It's going to be a big one. I mean, wide.
Yeah, that's pushing 20 now,
Yeah.
so probably that would be good.
Okay. Just leave it.
But you don't care if there is even a gap.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Well, glass is a very unforgiving material in its hard form. In its soft form, it's a very difficult material to work with because you can't actually touch the material, whereas in wood and clay you can. So you have to use tools to manipulate the material. So that in itself is exciting, but it's also difficult. When I first started, I tried to deny the beauty of the glass by covering it up, painting on it and so forth. And as I went along, I sort of just allowed that beauty of the glass to come through. And now I really try to work with the beauty of the glass, the color, the beauty of the color and so forth, and try to capture what glass does as glass.
Come way up on the tip. Point that up a little bit, or
Yeah, I'm just trying to get that. I think we're going in the mold now. Let's go in the mold.
right now.
Yeah, right now. Drop. Okay, start blowing. Yeah. Push down and blow.
What he brought to glass was just a fresh, new view of how to work glass. He invented his own technique. I mean, what he does is not a traditional technique at all by a long stretch of the imagination. And what I like to show my students when I'm talking about Marvin is that you need to find your own way of working. You can get trapped by technique, and Marvin certainly, you know, is a pioneer in exploring new ways to work glass.
Blow a little bit. Okay, let me just do a little adjustment here. A little adjustment right here. Okay, don't blow.
Okay.
And let's go to the bench. Out.
I compare him sometimes to painters like George O'Keeffe, or you know, they're colorists dealing with amorphic form. And you know, to me, he's sort of a, I guess you could call him an abstract expressionist in a way, dealing with very, I think, luscious, beautiful forms enhanced by, you know, great colors.
Well, right now it's going over to the annealing oven.
When I go somewhere, I don't have a preconceived idea what I want to do. I spend a short time walking around, taking a look, what the production is like, what the factory facilities are like, what the people are doing there, and any techniques that the factory seems to have. Working in Italy, using those ancient techniques of using cane and color. They have a lot of color in Italy and a lot of techniques, so I tried to take advantage of that when I was there. I also tried to absorb any of the cultural situations or the geographical situations that I find myself in. And I've worked in the Czech Republic in the fall a couple times, so I've tried to use the colors of the fall. Also in the Ukraine, Lvov, they have a beautiful fall, and I'll try to use those yellows and oranges and colors from the trees. Working in the island of Hokkaido in Japan, during the springtime, I tried to use the little flowers, the colors of the flowers coming up, and the ocean surrounding the island. Going to a foreign country, you deal with language, you deal with customs, you deal with customs in the factory, and you deal with social customs. They all combine. So I've never learned any particular language, so that was always interesting. But we always had some rapport with the workers, because the workers knew about glass and I knew about glass, and we could kind of communicate through what I was doing and through the work. Blowing the glass, working in the hot glass, is a fast situation. It doesn't take a long time. But when I bring the work back into my studio, then it's more contemplative, and I like to let the work sit around a while and look at it before I start to cut into it, before I start to finish the pieces. So it's just me and the glass at that point. I first draw a little bit where I want to cut into. Well, the first cuts are sort of a little scary because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to look. So they're additive. And I cut away, take away material from the piece to open up the insides of the pieces. Because I like to put color on the inside and have something different on the inside that's on the outside of the work. It's always evolving, the cold working process. I more or less taught myself how to work just by doing it. I never had any knowledge outside of watching other people in factories, and that was very limited how they did things. It takes days and weeks to finish each piece, depending on the size of it and how much I cut with the glass. So, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of hands-on grinding and cutting and the work. So that process is just with myself, and I don't have any really major distractions. I can just concentrate on what I'm doing. I've never liked the reflective glass itself because you always see what's reflected in it, and it was always difficult to photograph and so forth. And then I started to sandblast the pieces, and realizing that the sandblasting revealed the form better. That when you take away the shiny surface of the glass, you see the actual shape. It's more defined. I don't know. The success is relative. I sort of hate to sell the pieces sometimes. I mean, money helps, but you're losing something every time you sell the work. And in some respects, the work in your studio is alive, and once it goes to a museum or even in someone's collection, it dies a little bit because there's something missing. Something from you is taken away.
I think what's unique about Marvin's work to me is its organic quality. And there was a certain aesthetic that came out of the early glass movement, which sort of went along with the abstract expressionist painting movement of that time. And I think Marvin, more than anyone else, has maintained a connection to that aesthetic.
It's a celebration of shape, form, and color, I think. And because of that, I think it's always fresh. And I also think the stories that come along with the work are a wonderful thing too. That Marvin, everyone knows that Marvin explores the work in factories that are known for doing glass, and he captures whatever the energy in that factory is, or he captures the environment around that, whether that's a forest in Germany or in Japan or whatever. And out of that, he creates a mood. And so what you're seeing is a celebration of that time and place, a mood of the blowing experience. I think it's just very energetic work, and you don't see that often.
His influence has been great because his work stands out. Any show that you see anywhere in the world, you don't have to ask, who is this work by? It is always, obviously, by Marvin Lipofsky. And to have as clear a handwriting as that is a major achievement.
It was just chance. I think life is quite that way, that things just come up, and you never know what's going to happen next, and how things are going to develop. And I'm very fortunate that I came to glass, or glass came to me. Glass could have come to me. I don't know. I'm not sure that I came to the glass.